Hello everyone and welcome to my video presentation. My name is Raymond Lizal. I am responsible for all the drawings you see, and for my African Studies class, I wanted to depict something beautiful from Africa. Today I'm going to talk about the Galabeya, which is a type of clothing worn by men and worn by women in Africa. The Galabeya is very ancient and its story begins over 5,000 years ago, but people still wear it today. For some cultures, it's considered traditional clothing because in Africa, now many cultures wear westernized clothes. But you can still find people who wear Galabeya because it's comfortable. And you can also just wear it over your clothing. The home of Galabeya is Egypt, and it evolved from ancient Egyptian garb, which if you went far enough back into time, women were topless and children were nude. But as Egypt expanded and developed, fashion did as well, and clothing became more important. Clothing and jewelry and cosmetics were symbols of one's wealth and who you were. Also, cosmetics were used for sunscreen to protect the eyes and the skin from the heat and the sun. Clothing became more desirable, and wealthy women developed the fashion industry by beginning to wear dresses, and soon enough, men's clothing very much resembled women's clothing in Egypt. And the Galabeya kind of tells that story. Today, the Galabeya can be found around the world and throughout Africa. Egypt, Sudan, Eritrea, and Ethiopia all have populations which regularly choose to wear the Galabeya. The Galabeya was also come to be flexible for different lifestyles. Today around the world, wealthy and poor can be dressed up or dressed down wearing the Galabeya. Galabeya tends to be made from cotton. Galabeya was influenced by Egyptian royalty, but actually started out as farmers' clothing. And during this very ancient time, cotton and silk were not yet introduced to the Egyptians by the Europeans through the silk route trades from Asia and the Middle East and Europe. It was normal for ancient Egyptians to use linen made from the flax plant instead. Nowadays, it is common that the Galabeya is made with only pure cotton, which during the hotter seasons is used because it's thinner, and during the cold seasons, the Galabeya may be made with a mixture of cotton and silk, which makes the fabric more durable and thicker and yet soft against the skin, and keeps the wearer warm from the cold. The Galabeya for both men and women reach at least past the knee in length and follow a similar pattern. But as you can see, the woman's neckline, rather than being collared up like a man's neckline is traditionally, the woman's neckline is usually a U shape. Both men and women wear the Galabeya, and often they can look quite similar. Unisex Galabeya also exist. The difference between masculine and feminine Galabeya usually includes color, but not always. Color preferences and stereotypes change throughout time. For example, in some cultures in old times, only men were allowed to wear black, but now, in those same places, women are expected to wear all black. Color represents status, but also can represent the seasons, regardless if male or female. During the cold seasons, you would probably wear dark colors to keep heat retained in the fabric. And during the hot season, you would normally wear lighter colors to reflect the light from the sun and thus reflect the heat and stay cooler during the hot season. Men tend to feature striped horizontal patterns, whereas women's Galabeya tend to be more colorful and feature more floral patterns with more intricacy. It is common in ancient cultures to use clothing to differentiate men from women easily. but today you can find almost any type of Galabeya you might want to wear. These are women's Galabeya. As you can see, floral patterns, bright colors, and one woman is wearing a cream color Galabeya that is a unisex Galabeya. The neckline is masculine, but she is wearing it unbuttoned more than a man commonly would. Normally, Galabeya for women is more loose-fitting and breathable. In ancient Egypt, clothing for women could have covered her whole body, but because some linens were so fine, they were often see-through. Nowadays, most cultures which Galabeya is worn, men and women are expected to dress with modesty in mind and not wear sheer clothing. Unlike ancient Egypt, where women often wore entire dresses only made out of beads. Today, you can see that many trends have evolved from the ancient Egyptian fashion, including the Galabeya. I created a garment to reflect ancient Egyptian clothing. I believe this was during the Roman period. As you can see on the left, the painting of that man was a portrait that he was buried with. I modeled my clothing after his picture. The kaftan is similar to the Galabeya, also worn all around Africa and usually features a hood and is a bit broader than the Galabeya, but it overlaps very much. I created this one to reflect the evolution of Egyptian clothing through time. In this world, you can find many different types of kaftan, and they are also worn by both men and women. Last but not least, we arrive at the Galabeya, which features embroidery. The process on how to make a Galabeya is much more complex than the kaftan. Galabeya resembles a dress shirt. Many Galabeya feature embroidery, so I decided to add designs around the neck, the collar, and the shoulders. The kaftan was broader, but I made the Galabeya more slim to show the slight difference. Today, people wear Galabeya anywhere. If you happen to own a very nice fancy one, it can be the equivalent of a business suit. Men usually accompany it with headdress, which varies from place to place, but the main purpose is to protect oneself from the sun. Here you can see all three of my creations which represent African culture, fashion, and history. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed my project, and maybe you will try wearing a Galabeya for yourself. For your information, if you plan on making a Galabeya from scratch as I did, it took me about 12 hours to figure out how to make it. Thank you for listening, and God bless you